Next time I'll be reviewing Shadowman for the Sega Dreamcast. And no, it's not going to be emulated, it's going to be the real deal. See you there!
I am back. It's been 4 years since I reviewed a game with the series to the masses to barely anyone in the man interwebs of YouTube. Question is, why look at Shadowman now, you may ask? Long story short, my old laptop wasn't as good as it once was and had technical problems with the software crashing a lot. But now I have a Chromebook which has given me the opportunity to make this review that is long overdue in the making. 4 years is a very long time to wait, and a lot has happened in the world. Like Brexit, COVID, and the rise in living costs, which has probably traumatized you to a comatose state.
Listen, don't mention the war. I mentioned it once, but I think I got away with it all right.
I won't drill you on that any longer. Without further ado, let's get started. Shadowman is based on the comic book series I haven't read. A similar story to Turok, also based on the comic book series, giving Akkaim massive success on the N64 in the FPS genre, while everyone else was playing GoldenEye during the same time. Akkaim were looking to replicate the success with Shadowman that was released as a third-party game for the Dreamcast, PS1, and N64, or PC. Playing this on PS1 is not recommended as the port is massively butchered, with a huge amount of slowdown in parts of the game, the graphics being horrendous, the PS1 was being pushed way too hard to its limit. I haven't played the PS1 version myself, but the warning is there online while I was doing research. Something I should have done while making the other episodes. Good Christ, what have I done to myself? The game plays like a hybrid between Tomb Raider and Soul Reaver, which is a great combination if it was done by idols. But no, having Akkaim on the front of the box art is like having a crazy uncle. He can do wonders, but really needs to settle down on the booze. You don't know what you're going to get with Akkaim. You either get something pretty good or something god-awful. Shadowman is far from the latter. The gameplay plays from a third-person perspective which is executed well with decent controls that make it work with a 6-button controller. The Dreamcast controller is a mixed bag, and I don't blame Akkaim for this. Playing Sonic Adventure and Virtua Tennis is like bread and butter, but when you play Quake 3 Arena... You have lost the lead. You run for the hills. A sign out before I continue, my Dreamcast console I was using to make the review had stopped working during production, so I had to use the GameCube and PS2 versions of the games I mentioned. I did manage to get the rest of the footage of Shadowman, and so for the time being, I will not be looking to make any content involving the Dreamcast for the time being. Apologies for the inconvenience, back to the review. Playing as Michael Luar, you are his alter ego, the Shadowman, part of a lineage of voodoo warriors before him, a protector of the world of the living, a walker of worlds between dead side and live side. You need to stop the Legion and 5 serial killers, including Jack the Ripper, from powering up the Dark Engine to create an army seeking to destroy live side. However, the Shadowman can't stop them without his powers from dead side without collecting Dark Souls. No, not that Dark Souls. That would have been too easy. Using his brother's bear to teleport to game areas you've already visited so far in the game from dead side and live side through the connection of Michael's deceased brother, which saves the game from becoming tedious for travelling from one place to another. You can also save the game at any time. Collecting Dark Souls in dead side gives you more power. The more Dark Souls you collect, the more powerful you become in defeating enemies. It can be tricky to reach some of them. I like this mechanic as it's satisfying when you finally reach the more difficult ones. It rewards you for exploring uncertain areas. You also collect health, power-ups, and abilities that use up the shadow power that uses up the weapons in dead side, which is essential for completing the game. The weapons are decent to use and can dual wield with shadow power. I normally use the shadow gun, that is the default option. The game can reward you massively for exploring its world. That's what I enjoyed most from the game. While the guns in the regular world are completely useless without Shadowman powers, I needed to obtain through more abilities and power in Deadside. I managed to get up to power 5 or 18 souls in my playthrough. The Dark Souls makes the game easier defeating enemies. It can also give you access to doors, unlock places, or discover a secret area. The progression is where I enjoyed the game as well, making this one of the game's strengths. I found the platforming quite easy, if I can navigate myself. Enemies can be quite challenging with a good balance in difficulty, except for the bosses in Life World being extremely difficult. I'll explain later because I couldn't defeat the 2 bosses I encountered. Graphically, the game is good for 1999, having the highest resolution of the console ports. The nice visual design shows really nicely within Deadside and Liveside. I found it quite intriguing to see a lot of places that are messed up like the Asylum, but it can be too dark to see playing on a modern TV. Music and sound in the game are decent for 1999 with okay voice acting. Although it can be silent at times, you hear nothing but sound effects when I move from one area to the next. It can make the atmosphere feel empty at times. Not terribly, I might add, but it's a small distraction. The story is okay. The structure of it is good. I found the main story alright to follow. There are barely any cutscenes that progress the story forward. There aren't any boss battles in Deadside at all. There was cut content due to time constraints behind the scenes. Most of the information in the game is explained in massive amount of text in the in-game journal and game manual, which is like studying for an exam, which I massively hate. It put me off my full immersion of the game. If I wanted to read, I would have tried getting past chapter 1 beyond this book I barely read. I found this unbearable and very tedious. It massively holds the game back for being truly excellent. I wish there were better design choices that were implemented instead of reading a huge amount of text, which doesn't help me out at all. It's an odd thing to critique. It doesn't mean the game failed in its source material. It did a good job with the comic book lore, and it makes me sound ungrateful complaining about it. Though having to look up what items do what and reading pages of a journal of items where I haven't even reached yet isn't for me. I'm not into that sort of gaming. I wish there were more simpler ways rather having to read entire information about objects I haven't even found in my playthrough. The game is inconsistent in where I'm supposed to go. I get lost so often, and the layout of the game structure and its objective is pretty vague. I end up playing in Deadside most of my playthrough, which requires a lot of backtracking. Whenever I'm in Liveside, I can't use my Shadowman powers. I would either need to get all the Dark Souls to defeat the bosses, all I do is just shoot him and nothing seems to happen. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. The game gives me terrible hints which led me to being so bored immediately. It was confusing. I looked up other videos and it turns out that I needed to be fully leveled up to defeat them. It was one of the main reasons why I was stuck being in Deadside. It's best to leave them until you have all the power-ups and the ability to bring the Shadowman to the real world. It's a mistake on my part. Why have these levels unlocked in the first place? It confused me. I suggest you don't go into the cathedral, ignore all the boss fights until you collect all the Dark Souls. The game map is non-existent, which is criminal for a game like this. The layout to navigate where I am in the game isn't the best. It would have been nice to be given one. I get sent back to a checkpoint every time I die, and I continue from that point. It is frustrating to be sent back quite a distance, but at least the enemy stayed dead temporarily, which I am grateful for. It is a game which does not guide you along. You'll need to figure things out yourself, which works for some gamers, but not for others. In-game designs and the characters are nice to look at here. The characters I saw in my playthrough were Mama Jetty, a priestess who seeks visions of the future, Jaunty, who's her assistant in Deadside, which is a weird-looking snake thing. But are massively forgettable character-wise. They do nothing but give you advice whenever you go back and talk to them through repeated dialogue. I didn't get to the villains that much either, I'm afraid. They are completely immortal, which is a rookie error on my part. It led me to being frustrated in my objectives are meant to be in the game. The game is good. I had a good time in certain areas, exploring Deadside, enjoyable gameplay with okay puzzles, designs have nice visuals but can be too dark at times. Platforming is enjoyable as well. I wouldn't call it underrated though because I didn't put enough hours to make a full decision. The game takes an average of 33 hours to complete fully, which I don't see myself doing. I wasn't keen on the backtracking and the lack of consistent navigation where I needed to go. It led me to getting lost easily. Unless I look up a playthrough in my spare time, I'll give a game a go again. It has gathered a cult following and gained a sequel. It's not for me personally, as I do find some parts quite frustrating. I don't love it massively, nor do I hate it either. If you're into the old PS1 Tomb Raider games, then I recommend it. I heard about the game getting remastered earlier this year, and I haven't tried that one myself. I'm not keen on looking at it either. I'll just be repeating myself again with prettier graphics and added content. It's a good adaptation of the source material it's from on the Dreamcast. I've neglected talking about the N64 and PC version throughout the video, but should just work as fine. Just avoid the PS1 version. It's a green, or 7 out of 10. A good platforming Tomb Raider hybrid. Fair play Akkaim. This will be my last game review I will ever do, because I'm not good at them. It's more difficult than it looks. The Soloist game review series was interesting in my Soloist channel days, and I've never talked about that era. It was a fate worse than death, and I was massively deluded to think I was going to be a big star. I've put them back up to showcase how much I've improved since then, and this one now. Excluding these two I did last year, because no one gave a toss. The old reviews didn't get large views in their prime, and there's a good reason for that. They weren't my finest pieces of work. Although seeing them improve with each video was one of the major things I liked about making the series back then. I looked at all 16 of them again. I would not recommend watching any of them to look at. If I had to pick my favourite one at gunpoint, it would be episode 12 Star Wars Battlefront 2. Although I did fumble my info and made a few errors, but I actually was pretty good at reviewing it. The skit actually made me laugh, which was a nice surprise despite the audio issues. The rest of them are just meh or unwatchable. I'm also not making a skit for this review either. It was the worst part of my old videos. They were either stupid, annoying, or both. For those who have suffered from my god-awful antics of quote-unquote comedy watching any of these, then I do massively apologise for giving you a massive migraine or maybe a burst eardrum for the lucky ones. For those who haven't watched, consider yourself lucky. I'll be looking at video ideas and also do a tiny amount of remaking of some of my old videos I did. I might look into doing bigger projects I have in the works since January. I've been so busy with my personal life and college. I want to take my time so I can get other projects done and make them as good as possible. Other upcoming projects are planned, but I want to take my time with those too. I do this part-time and I see this more of a hobby than something to make money with. In other words, no ad money for me. Massive good news for you all. All the videos I will make will be on a shoestring budget. Last thing, I would like to say thank you for watching this review of Shadowman, and if you thought I nailed it, press that like and subscribe button to see the more upcoming projects I'm working on. I'll see you in the next video whenever I get it done. Bye.